Hi, today's good person to know is Mike Lee. He's an ex-Apple employee who's not afraid to be different. In fact, he fit right into Apple's culture, but it took him a while to get in there because Mike saw himself as someone who was different to most people and he was determined to work for Apple. Mike's talk was centered around his hindsight and some hard truths. He said nobody really cares, that 90% of tech is copied. He questioned why we're doing what we're doing and the purpose behind it. He says there are 3 different types of tragedies, and that separated us, and that nobody will save you. And learning a skill was the best advice he was ever given. But then it all changed for Mike when he was 36, when he had a near heart attack, and that's when he changed his perspective in life. He no longer worked to the point where he was stressing himself out because he realized that stress really could kill. And now he works on projects that are dear to him. He's not concerned about being credited for his work, but he is concerned about informed consent, and said that engineers and developers are responsible for the authorities spying on people because they made it happen. Mike said the world doesn't need more technology, but it does need trees, and now he's concentrating on things that are important to him. So if you feel different or that you don't fit in, I hope you're inspired by Mike's story, because he really did achieve everything that he wanted to in life, and he continues to do so. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching.
Here's to the crazy ones. The misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers. Steve Jobs actually spoke to developers that same year about the topic of being different, and his words were really interesting. He said, we don't want to be different. We are different. We don't want to be different. We are willing to be different where it's necessary to be much better. And so, when somebody put those words together with the pictures of every hero, that said something to me. That said that being different isn't necessarily bad. It said being different is the route to being better. And if you're better enough, maybe one day you'll be Apple good. I'm here to represent Apple, but I can't possibly represent Apple. I couldn't possibly, not only because I do not work at Apple anymore, but because how am I going to tell you 38 years of business strategy implemented by tens of thousands of people? But I have my own understanding of what makes Apple so good, of what makes Apple so different in this way. And I think it's relatively simple. In the same way that getting yourself an Apple badge where you're dressed like a pirate is relatively simple. You just get a job at Apple and show up on your first day dressed like a pirate. Simple doesn't always mean easy though. What I think is what is at the core of Apple is the willingness to examine and accept hard truths. That's what I want to talk about today. Here's the thing. Eventually nobody will care. We're all born into this nonsensical, unjust world, and we have to try to figure it out and come up with some meaning for ourselves. And most of us fail. This is the #1 problem that app makers have. They keep building shit like this. Why? Why would you do that? This is 90% of technology production. It's just lousy copies of something else that somebody thought was good. You know, this is a man with a tool who is looking for a job with which to apply that tool. This is the 10% of technology production that isn't a copy of other stuff. It's just us inventing stuff because we think it would be cool, and then productizing it, and then marketizing it. To what end? This is the question I find myself asking most of the time in technology. Whether it's a technical question or just a life advice question, to what end? Why? I think as creators you have to be aware of the potential tragedies that might befall you. The 3 tragedies of creation. The first of these tragedies, you know, it's the classical tragedy, the Greek tragedy. Not joining the Eurozone, but rather trying to do something and failing. When you try to do something, you have taken a very big risk that you're going to screw everything up. And so this whole notion of, hey, just do it and see what happens. Evil is the default. Then there's the modern tragedy, and that's doing evil by accident. This is what we do. And then, of course, there's the personal tragedy, which is leaving your loved ones to pursue a goal that is neither new nor necessary. This implies everything. This implies that you need to focus on things, that you need to be working on the right thing and not all the wrong thing, that you need to be solving the right problems and not all of the wrong problems. We're trying to solve problems that are neither important nor necessary or possibly even real, when there are actual problems that we could be trying to solve that we're not solving because we're wasting our time on bullshit. The first lesson I think that you get as a kid is, be yourself because you have to be yourself, because who else are you going to be? But here's what they don't tell you. You have to make yourself awesome. This is the other really hard lesson from my childhood is nobody will save you. You have a good idea? Nobody's going to build it. Nobody cares. The people who build their ideas, the people who do the work, those are the ones with the glory. Here's the best piece of advice I ever got. Learn a skill. I was at the airline. It was raining. I was cold. I was wet. I was unhappy for 5 years. And one of my coworkers was dry and warm and inside soldering some stuff together. And I was like, man, you have an easy job. And he said, I get paid more too. I said, how did you get this job? And he said, it's called skilled labor. Look into it. That was a great decision. I have never been so unafraid as I have been when I knew that I was useful. I was like, how do I get a job at Apple? You know, if you want to program for Java, then you should probably go to Java 1. If you want to be a Mac programmer, then you should learn to do it like it's done. You know, it's way harder to do things your own way, and you don't really go to school to be smart, you know, you go to school to be dumb and to learn. Being surrounded by Apple software engineers for the first time, it was like, oh my God, I know nothing. It was the most humiliating experience of my life. And I learned another very important lesson, which is sometimes you just need help. And so I found, you know, the person who I thought would be able to help me, and I asked them if I could work for them for free. Then iPhone came out, and that all got crazy. And my coworker, he got hired by Apple to build iOS. I asked, you know, one of the evangelists at Apple, I said, that's super awesome, you know, that you hired this guy. I'm super jealous of that. And he said, when you make the first iPhone game, you can come work at Apple too. Every time I have ever said something to an Apple person about how I wish I could work at Apple, I've always gotten a very similar response. Do something amazing, and then you can come work at Apple. I got that job at Apple. So those were the lessons that kind of got me to Apple. The question everybody always asks is, why did you leave Apple? A terrible thing to ship a successful game, because then you think you know how to ship successful games, and nobody knows how to ship successful games. But I've learned a lot of things. For example, I've learned that you really need to work with people you respect. You know, the people that you really like, the people that you'd really like to work with because you really like them, because they're really nice, because you really get along, maybe you even feel like you have something to teach them. Those people are mostly useless. They're terrible to work with. Because your whole relationship is based on getting along, and you're not going to get along if you're building anything worthwhile. And they're not useful to you. If they were useful to you, you wouldn't get along with them so well. If they were useful to you, they would be challenging you on a daily basis. They would be making you feel stupid. If you try to work with those people based on how well you get along, you're probably not going to do very well. But if you try to work with them based on how well they can do what you can't do, then your project might actually scale beyond your own capabilities. This was the best thing, by the way, about working at Apple. Every day, I felt so stupid. Just surrounded by you'd meet somebody and they'd be the smartest person you ever met, and then you would watch them talk to somebody who made them feel stupid, and you'd just be like, what is happening right now? A couple years ago, I guess at this point, I would probably be telling you to go out there and work yourselves to death, because that's what I've always done. And then that moment actually came where I was walking home from being at work for, I don't know, a week, and then this happened. I think I was 36. The diagnosis was kind of even worse, because they're like, there's nothing wrong with your heart. There's nothing wrong with your vascular system. There's something wrong with your life. There's the stress that you have because you're doing something that is relatively important, that you really care about, that is actually necessary, The kind of stress that you wish people would have when you're trying to get help and they're just like, I don't know, it's not my job. But then there's the kind of stress that you have because it's fun to have stress. It makes you feel important to have stress. It makes you feel justified in your actions to have stress. I have done the most dangerous driving when I have been under stress. That's the one that will kill you. Unnecessary stress that you allow yourself to get into for fun, like problems that you try to solve because you do not know anything but solving problems, these are not healthy. One thing I do know about people though is that they remember how you make them feel, more than anything else. Maya Angelou said this. People will forget how you've wronged them, they'll forget what you've done for them, but they will never forget how you made them feel. If you sneak into a project, do some very necessary work, and then sneak back out with nobody ever knowing you were there, you can do 3 times as much work as you're doing now. With all the worry about credit, with all the worry about telling people what you're doing, just do it. That is the most effective way to work. But there's another thing too, informed consent. Why, when you go to the hospital, you know what's going to happen to you before you have it happen to you. Collecting people's information to sell to the highest bidder as a business model is inherently unethical. Spying on people is unethical. Anything that happens to another human being without them being fully cognizant and willing to participate is unethical. What have we done? To what end? We put cameras on everything. We put microphones on everything. We put GPS trackers on everything. Whether you worked at Apple, or Google, or Microsoft, or Facebook, or you just hacked the web because you hated all that shit, we all gave people reasons to carry these devices. For what? So that the government can watch us masturbate? The government and every hacker and blackmailer and doxer? And we have enabled this. We, us, we did this. We did this. Here's the truth. We don't need more technology. If all of us stopped doing what we're doing, the world would probably be better off. A tree is 95% sequestered atmospheric carbon dioxide. We're trying to figure out how to make algae blooms to suck all the oxygen out of the ocean and give it up to the jellyfish? Or we could go to the tropical deserts that used to be tropical forests, and we can put the trees back. That's what I'm doing. I'm concentrating on things that are important to me. And so should you.